Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Shameless Freedom podcast. And today we are talking about pleasure is sinful and indulgent. You could actually even translate this into desire is sinful and indulgent. And actually, those are they're two similar things, but different at the same time because there is noise and tabooness around the word pleasure more so than desire, but there's still this belief out there that you shouldn't want more, you should desire more, whether it has anything to do with pleasure or not. And I would invite you to look at both of these words. Pleasure is sinful and indulgent, or desire is sinful and indulgent. And let's unpack that a little bit and understand what is underneath that. If pleasure is sinful, then it means it's wrong. So it is wrong for a woman to experience pleasure. It's sinful for us to experience the ecstasy and bliss of our body. Let's just think about that for a moment. When you look at it in those words, it's kind of like, why would anybody think that that's sinful or wrong to experience the amazingness of our body? But we have been taught to shame our own pleasure. You have likely heard pleasure is our birthright. And just because we hear it, it doesn't necessarily mean that we feel it in our bodies. Because the mind can think one thing, but the body keeps score. The body remembers things that it was taught years ago about pleasure and what is expected or what is moral or what is appropriate. The truth of the matter is, the clitoris is the only organ in the body, male or female, that was made purely for pleasure. I want to let that sink in for a minute. Think about every organ in your body. It serves a purpose. And for women, the clitoris's job is to provide pleasure. It's its sole purpose. That is why God created that for women to experience pleasure, not to suppress it or deny it or think it's wrong. Why would God create a body part on the female anatomy if it was wrong to experience what it was meant to do? Interesting part is men don't have that same component. Yes, they are able to experience pleasure and orgasm through their body parts, but their body parts are multifunctional. Ours, its sole purpose is pleasure. And the sad truth is we are not taught, first of all, that we have this birthright to experience pleasure. We are not taught how to enjoy pleasure in our bodies. Our female anatomy is actually complicated, and many times it's because we can't see it. It's not right out in front of us. It's internal. And we were never taught how to experience pleasure. And in fact, to be honest, sometimes I will use the word pleasure. Sometimes I will say self-pleasure. Sometimes I will use the M word, masturbation. And people will have different reactions to all of those words. And The truth is, so many were taught that masturbation and pleasure was wrong, completely wrong. That if you touch yourself and you try to make yourself feel good, to connect with your body, feel good, that it's bad. We are teaching our young children that pleasure is wrong for us to touch our own bodies. How are we going to know what turns us on? How are we going to know the depths of what we can experience, what we like, what we don't like, if we do not even know how to connect with our own bodies? I can remember when I first started delving into the self-pleasure masturbation topic, and there was a very dear friend of mine, and I remember bringing up the topic and doing some like interviews and asking questions. And she's like, yeah, she's like, I used to like hump my stuffed animals when I was a kid. And and I kind of snickered and laughed, but laughed with her because here's the truth. We have all experienced touching ourselves in some way, shape, or form, but we've also been taught that it's bad, that it's sinful, that we shouldn't be doing this. And when women can be open about the fact that we want to learn to explore our own bodies, that it's not wrong, it's not sinful. We can actually learn to experience the beauty and the exquisite bliss that is available to us. But most of us don't take the time to think about this word and what we were taught about it. There's also the component of it's indulgent, like having pleasure for pleasure's sake. Why would you do that? That's greedy. It's just about instant gratification. And here's the truth. That's a lie. It is a lie that we have been fed, that pleasure is just about indulgence and wanting something just for yourself, and that it's just about that instant. Like you should really want to feel more joy and peace, not pleasure. The body was made to experience pleasure. As I mentioned, we have 10,000 nerve endings in our clitoris, and its sole purpose is pleasure. But we have been taught that seeking pleasure leads to temptation or moral weaknesses, almost like if we have this desire to experience pleasure, that we're morally wrong. And we create this guilt and shame around enjoying our body, around learning how to enjoy our body. So here's the crazy part. We sometimes feel this discomfort with letting other people touch our bodies to even experience the pleasure itself, let alone connect with our own bodies and experience that pleasure. The truth of the matter is, if we are not experiencing pleasure for the sake of pleasure, what do? We actually go after substitute pleasures. Yes, we all do it. It could be food, it could be wine, it could be shopping, it could be gambling. I mean, there are so many different things that it could be. But I will tell you, and I have experienced this with myself and my clients, that many of the reasons that we put on weight, let's just use that as a great example, right? Why do we eat? We eat because it's comforting. It's satisfying. There's that instant gratification piece, right? Women are hungry for pleasure and they do not know it. We all want pleasure. Our bodies want to experience it. But we have been taught at the core that it's not something that we should do. It's taboo. And I want to go to what I will call a religious component and story that I believe a lot of our beliefs and thoughts around pleasure and desire come from. And I want you to think back to the origin story of Adam and Eve, that Eve went to go eat from the fruit of the tree. She had a desire to have the apple. And she was shamed for wanting to go after and say yes to desire, to say yes to experiencing that pleasure of eating the apple. And she was shamed, was then naked in the Garden of Eden, and then felt like was naked, right? Then started to feel ashamed about her body. And she had to hide. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. This is another way of looking at the story, right? So there are versions of the story of what we have been taught. And I want you to open up to a different way of thinking about this. That if we believe in original sin, if we believe that we all are sinners because of this initial desire that Eve had, that women are sinful for going after what they desire. If you have this, if you, in some way, shape, or form, feel like you don't want more, right? Like I've heard women say this all the time. They're happy with what they have, but they want more, but they just don't, they feel guilty for wanting more. Yes, we feel guilty because we were taught that we should not desire, that our desire is wrong or shameful, that it is sinful. And if we hold that belief in the core of our system, we're not going to move it through. And it's one thing to say, I can have all I desire, again, saying all of the affirmations that we want. But I want you to open up to the possibility that there are stories, there are generational beliefs that we have been taught that are grounded in religion that you may have never thought about, could be at the core of what is blocking you from experiencing the pleasure that you desire, from saying yes to your desires. Here's the truth. God wants you to experience pleasure. Desire is your birthright. Desire actually calls you forward. If you have what I'll call a true desire, those are the things that call us forward to connect more with the depths and the truth of who we are. Those desires are not wrong. They are actually creating that connection. You see, when I think back to the story of Adam and Eve, and if we take a look at that as desire is bad, wrong, and shameful, we then create this pattern in our lives that wanting anything is wrong. Wanting anything is shameful, and we should repent for that and not want more. And what that does is it creates this separation. You see, when we were first born and when Adam and Eve were first there, they were whole and complete. There was no separation. And you see, what we have been taught is that desire separates us from God to keep us separate and living in this human existence. We have created this concept of sin and questioning whether something is right or wrong. That whole mentality is ego. It is the separation of what it is we truly want. When, to be honest with you, when you know that there is absolute abundance and overflow in this world, you know your desire. If you have the desire, it is here right now. You don't wait years for it to come if you are in absolute alignment with it. Desire is what allows us to no longer feel separate. Desire brings us back to our wholeness. But we have been taught that desire and pleasure pull us away from God, pull us away from that wholeness. And it's this complete bullshit dichotomy that we have been taught. Now, here's the thing. If you've never heard this before, this may take some time to sink in. And you may question it. You may think, I'm kind of curious about this. I want to learn more. And this is where the conversation is important, because I'm just sharing with you my perspectives of what I have learned over this journey and what I've learned from my clients and other programs that I have been in where we have focused on the female body, woman's sexuality, and her pleasure. And our pleasure is sacred. Our desires are sacred. There's nothing wrong with them. And the sooner that we can create a culture that allows us to challenge the beliefs that we've been taught, to actually go to the root. Because here's the thing. If we don't go to the root, we're only addressing the symptoms. And I think that's what we do way too often. We may think that we found the root, and we haven't. If you have something that has been taught to you that is generational from a religious perspective, it goes deep. I invite you to consider, what were you taught about pleasure and desire? And how does that phrase sit with you? I want you to just close your eyes for a moment. If you're not driving, close your eyes for a moment and feel into pleasure is sinful. For you, how does that feel in your body? You see, that is the key. We need to be able to learn how to feel in our bodies and trust what comes up for us. If you listen to last week's episode, I talked about the moment when I heard that money and power were evil, and the hairs on my arm stood up. A visceral body reaction. You have a reaction like that. You are ready to dive into this deeper. Now, if you don't have a visceral body reaction, that's okay. It doesn't mean it's not there. It might mean you're not ready yet to dive deeper into that possibility. And I invite you to explore what you are hearing, to keep listening to these episodes that only talk about a slice. Most of these episodes are going to be somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes. I don't time them. Um, and there's so much more to say on this topic to address the concerns that you all have when you hear this. There is a brilliant couple. They are John and Stacy Eldritch. They wrote a book called Wild at Heart, and I remember looking at their material years ago and seeing some of these similar concepts around what we were really taught at the core. And women have three desires, three core desires as a woman that God placed in our hearts. Men have three, women have three. I wrote about these in one of my books in my Sensual Feminine Life series. I think it might actually be key four, which is the bombshell, which is learning about um, embracing our own feminine energy, playing with the power of pleasure. And women, we have this desire to be romanced, to be cherished, to be desired. Every woman wants it, whether we admit it or not. Two, we want to play an irresistible role and make a contribution. Everyone's contribution is going to be different, but we want to be able to make that contribution. And third, we want to unveil beauty. That in itself is a whole other podcast episode, probably actually a course to talk about what that means. Prayers that God planted in our hearts. They're for us. They are not meant to be suppressed. We want to feel cherished, treasured, romanced. That is part of that pleasure. You have a man that is cherishing you and your body. I guarantee you, you are going to feel pleasure. We all want it. We want to make a difference. And we all want to feel beautiful. But the way that we have been taught about beauty in society and even wanting to be beautiful. Oh, why do you spend money on getting your hair done or your nails done or expensive clothes or whatever it might be? We have a different definition of beauty, but we all have a core desire to unveil beauty. If you have resonated with the stories that you have heard here today, I invite you to continue to keep listening. This is week 2, and what we dove into is that pleasure and desire are sinful or self-indulgent. And I really invite you to feel deeper into that phrase and how you would really like it to be. Could you shift that for yourself to feel the depths of pleasure that we as women, that you were meant to feel and experience? And if you have your own stories that you want to share in regards to pleasure, like maybe what you were taught as a kid, you may have been taught something specific in your family or your household that is creating this block or this heaviness around even investigating this. You see, I see that there are two different types of people that are going to be listening to this work here. One are those that have experienced some religious trauma already and want to dive deeper, and they're ready to dive deeper. And then there are others that are curious, but are not really quite sure where this fits in their world. And what I would say to you is this: if you are curious, that is a desire. That is something in your heart that is calling you forward, something that wants you to experience more of that in your life. Because God made us to enjoy. He made us to experience pleasure in our bodies. We are spiritual beings living a human experience in a physical body. The goal was not, let's see how much pain and suffering that we can allow the human to experience. Joy, the bliss, the fulfillment comes when you can truly, truly embrace and allow yourself to experience the never-ending abyss of pleasure that is available for you.